Greetings, fellow Soulsborns. Today, I'd like to embark on a grand journey through the expansive worlds crafted by From Software. From the eldritch horrors to the serene landscapes, from the many, many poison swamps to the houses of gods. Join me as we delve into the top 10 best areas across various titles in the From Software library. I present to you the pinnacle of immersive gaming experiences. This list is, of course, my personal opinion, and I'm sure other players might have completely different ideas about them. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting our list is the grand finale to the Dark Souls trilogy, the Ring City. While the dredge heap at the beginning is interesting in its own way, it's really the Ring City proper I'm focusing on here. I have to give credit to From for loading the place chock full of references to all three Souls games, even the oft-neglected Dark Souls 2. The only thing I'm a little bummed about is that you can't explore much of the city that you can see from the upper areas, but nearly everything else about the presentation more than makes up for that. Going deeper into the city, we have a showdown with Midir, who is my pick for best dragon fight in the whole Souls trilogy. In fact, the Midir fight even rivals Elden Ring, even though that game really brought its A game when it comes to incredible dragon fights. The player ends up at the end of time and the end of the world, gazing at iconic landmarks from the Souls games that have all but crumbled into dust. It's a fitting, and a bit heartbreaking, end to the lore, topped off with a battle at the literal end of things with Slave Knight Gale, who is my second favorite boss fight in any FromSoft game. Next, we step into the ethereal world of Fountainhead Palace from Sekiro. I realize there's some debate as to whether or not Sekiro counts as a true Soulsborne game, mostly because of the lack of builds or a true leveling system, but I'm including it because, well, it absolutely rules. Fountainhead Palace really has some of the most stunning architecture and vistas in the game, but what I particularly like about this area is the contrast between the difficulty of the enemies the general tranquility of the environment. It's very much a sit and let the atmosphere soak in kind of area, which, to be fair, would be easier to do if there weren't things trying to kill you at every turn. Next in line, leaping out of the catacombs, we have Irithyll. Probably the most screenshotted area of the base game of Dark Souls 3, Irithyll is again another area that hides its threat behind a quiet beauty. It's also, in my opinion, where Dark Souls 3 truly gets cooking as a game. This is what Dark Souls feels like to me, going from a dark, oppressive area to a beautiful, almost surreal one. I love how this area seems to indicate a sudden passage of time to a snowy night, lit with an ominous crescent moon. It casts a somber blue hue over the whole area, creating a mood that is somehow both threatening and yet calming. I think it's the serene quiet that the gentle snowfall elicits, which seems to try to hide some of the horrors just under the surface. The reveal of elements from the first Dark Souls game is a treat for Souls veterans, especially the Guinevere portrait in one of the cathedrals. Another aspect that I love so much about this area is how the player can gaze back on places they previously explored, now cast in that melancholy blue haze. You can even see Firelink Shrine, which serves as a humble reminder of where you began and how far you come up to this point. My god, it's full of stars. Venturing into the vast and enchanting Elden Ring universe, the Siofra River captures my 7th spot. In a game with outstanding art direction at every turn, Siofra still manages to be my favorite area in Elden Ring. With its mystical charm, vibrant atmosphere, and dynamic world design, it showcases the evolution of From Software's craft to this point of their already very esteemed career. What I particularly love about Siofra River is that it feels, much like Ash Lake in Dark Souls 1, as if it's an area outside of time and space, somewhere that's mysterious but also somehow welcoming. It also continues From's tradition of having a boss that you actually genuinely feel bad for killing. Thanks, Miyazaki. Next, prepare for a haunting journey into the Hunter's Nightmare, a chilling DLC area in Bloodborne. This nightmarish realm introduces new terrors, expanding the lore and offering a visceral challenge that pushes players to their limits. It's easily one of the hardest areas in the game, only beaten by the other two DLC locations. The rewards for trudging through the area are more than worth it. The Bloodborne DLC is a top tier standout in what is already probably my favorite Soulsborne game ever, and the Hunter's Nightmare serves as an incredible introduction. What I particularly love about the area is how the player can see glimpses of familiar places they've encountered in the base game, all with a nightmarish twist. In my opinion, few games before or since have captured the surreal feeling of being in an actual nightmare, with architecture that literally stacks and fuses into itself. It doesn't hurt that the area boss, Ludwig, has my absolute favorite Fromsoft cutscene of all time. Incredible stuff. Descending into the tranquil depths of Ash Lake, we uncover a hidden gem in the Dark Souls series. Well, to be fair, with the age of the game, it's not so hidden anymore, but it's definitely a gem. Its vast, open environment, coupled with an evocative score, creates an atmosphere of both beauty and mystery, leaving an indelible mark on players. This area does something that I consider a From staple, descending through an innocuous area and discovering something impossibly large and expansive under it. In this case, the player trudges through Lower Blighttown, which is already an endeavor, and from there has to descend what feels like a mile, downwards into the Great Hollow, and finally they walk through an unassuming tunnel to emerge in an ethereal, glowing, magical area. So how does this even work? It doesn't matter, because it's such a treat just to discover this place. It's one of the things I love most about these games in the first place. Sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden behind the least assuming areas. There's just a really cool air of mystery about the place, with the trees that line the horizon sparking theories about connections to other games in the FromSoft catalog, even Demon's Souls. The music immediately envelops the player with a sort of epic calmness. It feels safe, but it also feels like they've just stumbled into a god's domain, which is basically true. And hey, if it weren't for the flying Hydra, I'd want to hang out here for hours, rotating the camera and taking everything in. Coming in at number 4 is the nightmarish Tower of Latria from Demon's Souls. This area immerses players in a dark, unsettling prison, then takes them to a connected series of spires with seemingly bottomless pits. Latria is filled with eerie sounds at every turn, grotesque enemies, and an absolutely choking atmosphere. This level is arguably even more atmospheric in the original game, but I personally love the fidelity and lighting effects in the remake. The location is a masterclass in atmospheric storytelling, making it a masterpiece of psychological horror and a defining moment in From Software's legacy. I love both the area and the elements that inspired future FromSoft games. And hey, speaking of horror, next we venture into the tragic tale of Hurst Castle, where we find ourselves in a gothic masterpiece within Bloodborne. This is an area of haunting beauty, almost of a place lost to time. It feels like a place that is very much forbidden, and the ghostly denizens of the castle are a stark reminder that you are not welcome. It's a location that reminds me of the best parts of early Castlevania games, which is a very good thing indeed. As I've mentioned before, From is great at creating environments that have a sort of menacing isolation, and Hurst is no exception. This is probably my favorite area in the base game of Bloodborne. I couldn't in good conscience not have Anor Londo on this list. Arriving in Anor Londo is arguably the peak of the entire first Dark Souls game, and the experience of seeing the golden spires after trudging through relative misery and sometimes near darkness is unmatched in my opinion. There's also a sinister aura to the area that lies just below the surface, which adds much to the mystery and intrigue of the location. It might even be my favorite area if it weren't for... And finally, topping our list is Mula from Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, the black sheep of the franchise. While I've heard all sorts of criticism for Dark Souls 2, some of it warranted, some of it hyperbole, I think it's pretty undeniable that Mula is a total vibe. What I love about Mula is that it gives a simultaneous feeling of serenity and also loneliness, of calm, but also melancholy. The haunting music helps a ton here, coupled with the sunset view over an endless ocean. It's probably the only Soulsborne setting that I'd almost consider living in. Just beware of the killer piggies. As we conclude our journey through these extraordinary realms, it's clear that From Software has a talent for creating immersive and unforgettable environments. Let me know what some of your favorite Soulsborne areas are in the comments below, and let's celebrate the brilliance of their game design. Until next time, fellow adventurers, may your journey be as captivating as the worlds From Software continues to create. Happy exploring! Thank you for watching. I'd appreciate any and all support, so please throw a like and subscribe my way if you enjoyed this video. I'm also on Patreon at patreon.com/theinfernalrealm, and I stream on Twitch as Infernal1. Thanks again, and see you next time.